Hello, my name is Dr. Jim Doty, and I'm the host of the Into the Magic Shop podcast, where we explore the mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart. Hi, this is Dr. Jim Doty, host of the Into the Magic Shop podcast. Today's guest is Helene Guillame Pabis, who is a data scientist, as well as a financial consultant who has deep experience with the use of artificial intelligence. She's also the founder and CEO of Wild.ai. Today we're going to talk about her groundbreaking work examining female physiology across the 4 life stages of the menstrual cycle, birth control, perimenopause, and menopause to understand clearly what the female body needs and when. As many of you may not know, almost all science related to human physiology, men have been used as the subjects. And in reality, the data between males and females is quite different. We'll also talk about her experience as an extreme athlete, an ice swimmer, a skier, an ultramarathon runner, a triathlete, and how motherhood has changed her daily routines, as well as her own personal mindfulness practice. We'll delve into gender disparities in health research, particularly in sports science. And she'll address how Wild.ai is addressing these gaps by providing personalized health insights for women based on their own physiology and hormonal fluctuations. I hope you enjoy our conversation today. And again, thanks so much for listening. Helene, how are you?
I'm excellent, especially now that you are finally here.
Oh, notice everyone, she says finally here. So we had a little confusion. So let me apologize to Helene before we start here.
You are pardoned.
Oh, thank you, my dear. You've just made the world a better place, so I feel so much better. Well, listen, we had such a wonderful time in Portugal, so I miss you.
Me too. How are you? How's your move going?
All good. You know, my book came out, well, though this obviously is not about me, but that seems to be doing well. But of course, we're here to talk about you and Wild. But before we do that, what I usually like to do is actually ask my guests a little bit about their backstory. I know somewhat, and you're connected to the famous Belgian diplomat, aren't you, Philippe Guillame?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that, because that's a story in and of itself.
Ooh, you did some good research. So my background, my father is Belgian French, my mother is Polish. My grandfather is a diplomat. My great-grandfather was also a diplomat, and all the lineage above. So a lot of traveling and a lot of making babies with the most exotic people they found. So I continued in that pursuit, and I did find someone very exotic to make babies with. So
okay, I didn't think that was where the orientation of this conversation was going, about the lineage of making exotic babies or finding exotic partners to have babies with, but I'll go with it. And since I've known you long enough, I have met or been introduced to or shown a variety of partners from around the world, but now you're settled down, actually.
Okay, that is part of the private realm.
Okay.
But fine. So that was my past life, James.
Okay. Okay. Sure, whatever you say. But let's get
So let's leave the lineage. But yeah, so traveled a lot, and so I grew up in many different countries, and then as education. Because yes, I do have an education, James. I studied mathematics and financial risk. I was a quant in a hedge fund and management consultant in AI. and from there, and an athlete, and from there, from personal struggles, I developed my company, Wild AI.
Wonderful. But before we talk about Wild AI, you're also, I'm not sure if the correct word is an extreme athlete, but maybe you are. But obviously, you're very competitive and probably a type A. But tell me about some of your pursuits as an athlete, and then we'll get into babies and Wild AI.
So I am an extreme athlete, and on a pregnancy pose, I guess, although I do practice sports still. So my passions growing up were swimming, not that competitive, not that extreme, but then also downhill skiing and race horse riding and rugby. And then I got into ultra marathons, so 100 kilometers runs in the mountains and triathlon, and now surfing. So love testing what my body is capable of and pushing the limits. And I love one sentence, which is discipline creates freedom, which is the background of the name of my company, Well, the AI, the algorithms with discipline, and then it gives you the opportunity to go wild. So this is something I practice in my daily life as an athlete.
Well, speaking of discipline, do you have, because a lot of people, of course, have whether it's a mental health practice or a mindfulness practice, do you have that?
It changed a lot throughout, I guess, the last few years, because before having babies, I loved waking up before 6 a.m., do a meditation, sports, and then start working around 7:30, 8:30 a.m. And now
Oh,
that I have
I thought you were going to say 7:30 or 8:30 at night. So it was a long, long.
a long preparation, and after 12 hours of preparation,
Yeah.
I can do half an hour of work,
And then I got all my sleep.
and then I have to sleep 8, 9
Yeah, yeah,
hours.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yes. But it was a very intense half an hour.
yes, and because I'm extremely intelligent, it's very good and focused. So and now it completely switched. So I had a child. I gave birth to a child 19 months ago, and since then I have a very slow morning, being in bed, cuddling, breastfeeding, and so completely different mindsets. And I still surf and I swim and I get my. I don't meditate as what people would call meditation per se properly, but my meditation, I would say, is still in swimming laps and then reading and writing. So enables me to fly and disconnect and feel in the flow.
But I would suggest simply being with your child and cuddling is in and of itself sort of a meditation. And because, I mean, what makes us who we are is our connection to others, right?
Yeah, and actually something that is really interesting is I think when we don't have kids, we need to have external triggers, meditation or other things to connect with the basics. So connect with nature, connect with our body. But then having a child and seeing how she discovers the world and she's like, oh, when she sees a bird, it's actually it really puts me back to this state of appreciation of the world and the very simple things. So it's true, it actually really is a state of I would say the ultimate state of meditation, which is this huge appreciation of the world.
Well, also, I mean, by being with your child, I'm sure, results in and especially breastfeeding, the release of oxytocin and other neurotransmitters that actually put you in the right state, and you get all the advantages of not only the right mental state, but the right physiologic state as well. So I notice a weapon you're wearing on your right hand. Is that this ring you're wearing? This looks like very dangerous to me. Is this a self-defense thing or what?
It's actually surprisingly a ginkgo leaf, like from Japan.
Really?
Oh,
Ah,
yes. I mean, it is in gold, but my mother is an artist and she made it. We lived in
oh,
Japan when I was a kid, which is very inspired by Japan. So it's a leaf.
It still looks like a weapon to me, because if you close your
It can also be utilized as a weapon, and it has not been so far. But if you're, next time I see you and you being the normal you might experience it.
Oh, okay. Well, we may not be seeing each other for a while. Anyway, where were we? Wild. So, obviously, I'm aware of Wild from you and looking at the website and stuff. But I think what a lot of people don't appreciate is that most of the science, in general, related to the study of humans or human physiology, has always been focused on males, a very, very, very small percentage on females. And as a result, this has been promulgated on society that this is actually true for females. And in fact, it's not whatsoever. And as I understand it, you and a colleague searched the literature and did an analysis, and it showed that 6% of actual articles related to health or physiology were male-oriented.
So 6% in sports are focused only on women. Yeah. So together with Dr. Stacy Sims, who made all her research on female physiology and became really the veteran in that field, we analyzed a lot of the existing white paper analysis on the female physiology, what was existing. There isn't much, but there is. And then we came down to a subset of 450 white papers, and then analyzing that to understand how the female physiology works, especially across 4 life stages: the menstrual cycle, birth control, perimenopause, and menopause, and understand what does the female body need and when, and then turn that research into an algorithm that feeds our app. So what we have as a product is an app on your mobile phone. And the way it works is we take data from wearables, manual input, we aggregate these two, it gives a female readiness score. And based on that, we provide insights, recommendations to women on how to eat, exercise on a daily basis. And that underlying is the hormonal fluctuations that impact heavily our needs.
Have you gotten any insights? Obviously, the medical profession makes a variety of recommendations. As an example, related to menopause, a hormone replacement, or in regard to birth control. And we can talk about sports and other things, but any insights that you found actually quite amazing, extraordinary, or misguided from this research?
Yeah, so first is the general understanding of what is happening to us when we are taking these hormones. So I think as women, as young girls, we might be given a birth control for many different reasons, because we have acne or we have pains, but we are not really educated on what it means to us. I often get the question, should I even take a birth control? So birth controls as a history is an amazing thing that happened to women in the 60s. Sexual liberation, we can have sex with whoever, however we want, while deciding if we want or not to get pregnant. So it's amazing. The issue is that it hasn't really evolved since then. So we take big amount of hormones, and if we compare it to men and we say to the guy, okay, you're going to take testosterone, or we're going to reduce your testosterone, you're going to lose hair, you're going to gain weight, they're like, no thanks, or like, give me more information before I sign up for that. But as women, this is what we are given, and increase or decrease cancer risks, and we don't have visibility. So the first thing is education around our options is really important when it comes to birth control and when it comes to hormone replacement therapy when we enter perimenopause or menopause. And we don't have that. So a big part of our work is education on what are these different things. So briefly on contraceptions, we have 3 types of contraceptions: combined, progesterone, and estrogen. Progestin only and non-hormonal, like copper IUD. And the way they work, they either stop or not ovulation, they increase the thickness of the mucus so the sperm cannot go through, or they decrease the thickness of the lining. So if there is a fertilized egg, it cannot stick there. And so understanding what type of hormones we're taking, what are the options that are non-hormonal, and what are the impact on our bodies is actually a really good start to take decisions. For menopause, it's actually really interesting because replacement hormonal therapy can actually really help women who have very strong symptoms, but there are some conditions. So what is very effective for is helping against hot flushes and certain conditions, but you need to be within to the risks can become quite high if you take hormone therapy, because if you take more than 10 years, it's actually the risks outweigh the advantages. You need to be under 60 years old, you need to be healthy, and you need to understand the basis is like you need to understand your symptoms, because hormones can help the symptoms, but what is happening through perimenopause, the transitional time up to menopause, is that not only your hormones are going down or up for luteinizing hormone, depending on which one, but it's also our triggers in our brain, which is where you, Dr. Dochik, would come in. The triggers in our brain are different. And so and the hormones we're taking are different hormones, they're artificial. So they only do a certain type of job. So first is, what are my symptoms and what are my options? So hormones is an option. And then there's non-hormonal options as well, such as, so it's medical drugs. And then you also have the other alternatives, which are herbal-based solutions, which also can be very effective. And so the baseline is my symptoms, what are my options, and then start taking those, track as you are taking those to see if it has any impact on you, and then learn from that. And this is where we can help as a company, because we help you provide these recommendations and then help you track. And then over time, you have these reports and you can see if you are progressing or not in one way or the other. And what we are doing in the background as a company is that we are trying to create profiles of women. So if I'm profile B, in 3 years' time, I know that this is the best route for me, which today don't exist. So if you talk to a gynecologist or a doctor, they just don't know what are the options for you. And that is mind-blowing.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's why I think it's so important that women have access to information that has been thoughtfully curated, because a lot of physicians don't have that level of expertise, because they are taught what they're taught in medical school, which isn't necessarily comprehensive, nor is it as thorough, I don't think. And I think also it's not designed to thoughtfully examine the reality of women. They're different women, they have different experiences, or they have different physiology, and that is not really monitored or recommended to be monitored oftentimes. Now, obviously, I'm not a gynecologist, but that's sort of my sense of things. Let me switch topics a little bit. Not necessarily about babies, but we'll get there. Uh, uh, are you pregnant again?
Oh, come on, you know it.
No, I didn't. How far along are you now?
I am 8 months.
Oh, congratulations. Would you
Yeah.
like me to come over and deliver the baby?
You are a neurosurgeon, not a gynecologist.
Well, I need practice. Uh,
But you can analyze my brain while I'm giving birth if you want
oh,
for medicine, for the medical research.
you'll just be in a state of bliss. Uh,
Yes.
but in the US, and I think around the world, oftentimes children are encouraged to get into sports. And what we know, certainly from the male experience, that can have a downside, because many of these children start sports too early, and it can have a negative effect on their bodies. And also, sometimes the demands of that and the stressors associated with what parents want can impact that as well. What are your thoughts about women in sports?
Very interesting topic. So a few things. First of all, you are right. If you push a young person, but let's talk about women, which is my expertise, into sports, what happens often, and it is still advocated, that if you are an athlete, you do not have a period, it's normal. The issue in young girls is that they are going through puberty, and it's a time that is extremely demanding in terms of nutritional values. And when we push the body really strongly and we do not understand what are the actual needs of the female body at that time, she might have her periods are arriving much later, which we just think, okay, she's just not having her periods yet. But what might happen is actually she is under a state called RED-S, which is a combination of being underfed, that leads to no periods, and that also leads to bone density going down. It's extremely damaging for a very young girl. And because we don't know that if she's ever had a period or she's supposed to have a period yet, we might think it's okay. And so now it's still commonly said, and it's changing a little bit, but coaches would say that it's normal that either you don't have a period or you lose your periods. So that is the first thing. Second is that there's a real issue in body image, and coaches would encourage actually being very skinny, and they would weight girls. And there's a big issue on that starting at very young ages. And then the third thing on the thing that the question you were saying on the parents, I met this woman who did a documentary, and I don't remember the name, but she followed a skier, a professional girl skier in the Nordics, when she was not a pro yet, and then she became a pro, and then she turned 18, and she had been followed by this documentary since a few years. And when she turned 18, she actually said that she was abused in the sense of like the physical abuse of sports by her father, who really pushed her too hard. So she said, like, when she was going downhill, he would push her to go faster. So it was then in dangerous situations. And so the documentary that she was making is really interesting because it's around this idea, like what that is, that for her it was child labor. So you are pushing a child beyond their desire, and it's such a weird thing, or it's so hard to get your head around, because when you're a teenager, sure, you love something, but certain days you just don't know what to do it. And I remember my parents, like, I don't know, I loved horse riding, for instance, or I loved skiing, and then one day I just don't know what to do it. And then if they didn't push me, but then what is pushing a little bit normal, and what is too much, that becomes child abuse and forced labor. And that is a very thin line that is quite hard. So I spoke to her, and I think the learning is, overall, if it's the desire from the child, we need to encourage it, and then understand when is the tipping point where the child doesn't want it anymore.
Well, it's interesting, though, because I've also seen it the other direction, where the child gets fixated on it and they want to do it all the time. And so that's the other aspect. But I think the point is to have some insight into actually what's going on. And you could call it sort of metacognition, in the sense of actually seeing it externally, how these different factors can have a positive or negative effect. Because, as you know, there's nothing wrong with a moderate amount of stress to help you perform, because that's the nature of life too. We have to perform. But when it becomes excessive and abusive, then that's a problem, and it has a huge, huge negative impact, whether you're a male or female, of course. The other aspect I'd like to ask you about is, you mentioned body image, which I'd like to get to in a bit, but we've seen over the last many decades that the onset of puberty, or having your period, seems to get lower and lower. What do you attribute that to?
So I'm not an expert on that, but unfortunately our environment, our direct environment, is so polluted with plastics and all the chemicals that we are inhaling in the households, in public places. So that seems to have a big effect on our hormonal endocrinological system. And one thing as well that I had read is that female hormones that are in the contraceptives actually are not filtered in the water systems. And so we take these hormones, men and women, young girls, and it impacts how early your puberty gets hit. And it also impacts men fertility, which brings me to one of my favorite topics, which is
Men's
vasectomies.
fertility. Oh, oh well, of course, yes. Okay. Well, let's talk about your favorite topic.
One of.
Yes. Give me your opinion on vasectomies. Now, let me just
Yes.
mention, though, I just saw an article, although I can't remember the specifics, but they now have created a male birth control that actually has few. Now, I've heard this before, and I'm sure you have few, if any, side effects.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts on male contraceptives and specifically vasectomy?
Yes. So I think that it's for my work in female health, a lot of my work is actually changing the messaging that we have. Like, I was never told growing up that my body was insanely powerful. Like, creating humans is insane, blows my mind. But this is not what I was told. I was told it's annoying, you have a period, you get pregnant, you get out of work, and then you have menopause and you're annoying. It's like you're moody and bitchy, you complicate. That's what I heard.
That's been my experience.
Okay, we're gonna edit that part. And so, but also, like, we didn't understand our bodies, so we underfed, or we don't
Right.
have the right
Yeah.
nutritional value, so we feel like shit. But the flip side is that men also have been told a story that is not great. Is like, what I hear over and over again when I talk about men taking taking care of the fertility of the couple, or just helping the couple not have any more kids. They're like, but I will feel less of a man. It's like it's like, I don't really want to do that because it's such a sensitive area. The side effects are really bad. Or like the one that really I think is the best is an adult man who has 3 kids with his partner, has decided together with that partner that is enough. The person is maybe, let's say, in their 45, 50, their fertility journey with that partner is done. But somehow in their mind, they think they have this image of them being these like 87-year-olds, like silver fox, that a 22-year-old
You're getting a
woman.
little too close to home here. Thank you.
And let me tell my it's very poetic. 87-year-old silver fox has this 22-year-old woman who comes and really desperately wants a child from him. So he cannot do this vasectomy that is reversible, but there is a small risk that he won't be able to have a child at age 7. So like, that is this repetitive journey. So instead of that, I would like to flip the conversation and say, take the power in your hands. You have the power of deciding when you want a child or not. Stop being abused by all these women who want kids out of you, and you can take ownership of your fertility, you men. And I even had an idea of a company which is called Splash Everywhere. So they can basically splash everywhere. And it would be a little van, like the coffee vans. And they go around the city and they do a vasectomy in 30 minutes. And then you get out of that. And that's it.
Oh, I was thinking of splash in a different way, but okay.
Splash, yeah, you can splash sperm, because basically when you have a vasectomy, you keep having sperm. So yeah, that was the startup
Yes.
idea.
Well, I think we should now focus on that. Actually, let me let me ask you another question, because I think one of the barriers, as an example, in third world countries, is the subjugation of women, and I think there is a huge push about women's empowerment, and in some ways, your company is addressing that in the sense of educating women about that. And I was listening to a talk by Christopher Hitchens, and he was saying the solution to poverty in the world is actually women's education and empowerment. And maybe you can just give me your thoughts on that.
I was speaking at MIT, and another speaker was this professor at Harvard who is incredible. And her course is on the topic that the security in countries is actually directly linked to female education. So there is a direct correlation between poor female education and how dangerous or unstable the country is. And it was really interesting. I never heard it that way, because that means that if you are promoting girls' education, it's as an agenda, as a political international agenda, it actually lowers the risk of instabilities, which is because very often when we talk about female education, in people's mind is like, okay, it's another cute thing to do. And it's like, no, it's actually, there's a really important reason behind, because women's education, like when you have environments where girls and women are discriminated, treated like shit, not educated, there's a big amount of like onward pregnancies, the education level cannot rise, and the country remains quite poor. And so it's really interesting to look at it from a geopolitical perspective. And then there was this other woman who works for the UN who was mentioning the gag rule, which is the direct correlation between the US agenda and the international agendas when it comes to subsiding any support and help to other countries. So if in the US abortion is illegal, then abortion becomes, you cannot talk about abortion in Africa if any money from that not-for-profit came from the US. And that is crazy, because it means that when there's a decision taken in the US, it directly impacts the state of the world and the state of girls and women's lives around the world. So it's worrying with what happens. And yeah.
Well, but I think the work you're doing actually is fundamentally women's empowerment, because you're educating them and you're giving them options and choices, which they actually, I think, didn't even realize they had. Let me ask you one question about the menstrual cycle in third world countries and educating or giving women pads and things like this. Talk about the impact of that, if you will, and how important that is.
Yeah, I think men can really not understand what it means to have a period. So like you are bleeding and blood is coming out of your clothes. And if you don't have a pad or something to collect that blood. So in countries where they don't have access to these products, they will choose to stop going to school because they have blood coming out, and it's just and because it's very shameful, because there's a lot of taboos put around blood in our countries as well, by the way. They will stop the education because of that. So and when we see today that still in US, Europe, having toilet paper, if you go poop, you will have free toilet paper, but if you are bleeding, you won't have free products. It's quite crazy when you think about it. So just statistically, women between the age of 13 and around, like, let's say 47, 50 years old will menstruate around 7 days, like 5 to 7 days in a menstrual cycle. So in average, let's take a rough average, like low base case scenario to high base case scenario, 20 to 25% of the time, women are menstruating. All women of that age. It's a huge amount of the population. So there's a lot of blood going. And so if there are no access of these products, and I remember when I was a student and I had a very small budget to manage, buying period products was quite expensive. Like I would much rather buy a glass of wine than a box of tampons. Yeah. But I had to, because it was not really a choice. And so in our countries where we do have these products that are available in supermarkets, it is for people who have less money, it is an issue. But also, like, just for us, like the amount of like, you ask any single woman if she has been in a situation where she didn't have a product because it just arrived by accident, is 100% sure. Leaks, 100% sure. And so in countries where they don't have access to these products, it's a real issue, because it's not even a question of money at that point. It's a question of accessibility of these products.
Well, thank you for we went the whole gamut here, but I think what you're doing is extraordinarily important, and I appreciate you coming on. And maybe you can share with our listeners a few comments about what you're doing, the goals of it, and the potential impact and then we'll say our dues.
So yeah, I think growing up, doing sports, being a girl and then a woman, I really did not appreciate having a female body. So talking about periods, when I had my first periods, I thought it was just so annoying. And when I started having breasts, I just felt it was really annoying. I couldn't be like, I had to wear a t-shirt all the time. I couldn't be bare-chested on the beach anymore. And I just felt they were on the way of doing sports and being active and just having fun. So, and there was no positive messaging for me about that, because I was, just love being active. And then as I grew older and I was doing more and more sports, it was just an annoying part of life, having variations in my resting heart rate and things like that. So I was trying to really tame any feelings that I had. And then I discovered through creating this company that the female body actually has issues. Like we have these, what should be called chronic pains or chronic conditions, because we don't understand our body. So if we understand, like we all have a daily cycle, wake up in the morning, you feel pumped, go in the evening, you feel tired, go to bed, great. If you're a night shifter, you will die younger and have more disease because your body is not meant to support that. And as a menstrual cycle, if you're not going with the menstrual cycle and you go on the counter cycle, you also impact negatively your body. So you have premenstrual symptoms that are really strong, inflammations, chronic conditions such as endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, which are related to inflammations, which you can actually impact positively by changing the way you understand your body. And so suddenly it flipped my understanding, which is, instead of seeing it as just an annoying thing that is absolutely possible to explain, to like time series patterns fitting really well my background as a data scientist, and understanding this research, understanding these bodies, and then this plethora of life stages that we have as women, which is fascinating, because we're literally at the beginning of a boom of understanding of the female body. In 5 years' time, I think women in countries, developed countries, will have access to much better information thanks to companies like mine. And so my life mission became to think it's amazing to be a woman, because I really didn't. And I never wanted to change sex, but I definitely felt that the holy grail was the man body. And I was envious. And now I've had, it's my third pregnancy, a miscarriage. I have a child, and I'm pregnant of my second child. And it's incredible. But I was not told that, women are God. Like, we are literally creating the whole of humanity, and we should be celebrated for that. And yeah, we are feeling more tired and my back is hurting, etc. But I am like a professional athlete right now. I am, producing so much energy to create a child. And so changing that and changing the messaging. And so my personal mission for myself became my life mission, which I want to transmit to women, is like, we are incredible. We have insanely powerful body. Using these words, power, strong for women, because we are. And, changing all the vocabulary, like stop using, you have balls to tell someone is strong. It's like the weakest part of the body. And stop saying your pussy to be weak. Like, it is probably the strongest part of the body. So yeah, it's my day-to-day fight.
Well, it's been a joy, as it always is, hanging out with you. And I hope we get an opportunity. I may come out to the summit again, and hopefully we'll see you there. And if you're out in the Bay Area, let me know and we can hang out a bit. But much love, my dear. I always enjoy hanging out with you.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for being with us today. The Into the Magic Shop podcast can be found where you find your most popular podcasts, or you can find us at intothemagicshop.com.